All right. We have covered the first part of authentication and a bit of validation and encryption. Authentication is just what we have just done through creating a login system whereby a user can identify himself or herself, and we can say that he or she is a valid user. So that's authentication. Now, authorization. So who can tell us about authorization? Someone to tell us what authorization should entail. Ian, someone, Ian and someone. Ian first, then someone.
Yeah, so maybe I can say for authorization, as some of us said in the morning, is the permissions or what the user can do on the site. So you just restrict some and give some permissions to the user.
Okay, awesome. Someone. No. If you understand authorization, think of it as in campus or in a protected place. So in most protected place, there is a watchman at the gate. And I'll give an example with a school. So for campus, all you need to do is give an ID and say that, and this ID will say that I'm a member of this school. And then the soldier or the person at the gate will let you go. So if you don't give, then it's not going to let you go in. So you don't go in if you don't have an ID. Same case we are going to use there. We'll have a request, and this request will meet a soldier somewhere in between, and this soldier will ask for something, a token, which in our case is an ID. And if the request has a token, it will be able to continue with the execution. If it doesn't have a token, then we'll terminate the execution right there. So if we explain authorization, it's that simple, and what are tokens? And token is just a way of saying that I have the privilege, or I'm supposed to access this route. For example, you have someone, okay, if your admin is the one who is going to add product in your case, then a user will not add product. So you need to know how to make sure that you can use the token and check if if this token contains, this token is for an admin or this token is for a user. That's what we'll be doing in this case. So now, if you were to talk about authorization case, the gate is the login. So whatever is inside or whatever can be accessed only when the user is logged in. So what is in between the user accessing some routes and not accessing is a login page. So a user must log in order to access things like placing an order, those kind of things that will require a user logged in. But if the user doesn't log in, then it's going to access all the other unprotected routes. So unprotected is a route that won't ask you for a token, or is a gate where you can pass freely without having to give an ID. Okay. Now, how can we apply this to code, or how do we apply this? So when it comes to authorizing someone to access certain routes, there are several ways. We have sessions, we have cookies, and we have tokens. We are dealing with tokens. Tokens, the difference between tokens and cookies and session is that tokens are stored on the client side. Servers, sessions and cookies are managed on the server side. So with tokens, it's a bit easy to control things because they are stored on the client side, not on the server side. With session, you have to read them and they have to be managed on the server side. So I want to talk more about in depth about sessions or cookies, but just know that is another alternative to this, but currently tokens are the most common one. So with tokens, we have something called JWT. JWT is just a short form for JSON Web Tokens. So it's one thing, a library that we're going to use in order to generate tokens, to verify tokens, and to check if a token is expired, all those kind of things. So token has three main things. So it's divided into three things. And let me open this website so that you can see that. I'll go to JWT, jwt.io, and you can see an example of a token. So this is a token. These strings that you can see on the left side, that is how our tokens are also going to look like. And on the right side, on the left side is the token. On the right side, you can see there are three divisions there. We have an header, we have a payload, and we have a signature. So these are the three main things that compose a token. And you can see that because the red side represents the header. The is this color. I'm always colorblind. The purple one, I'm hoping it's purple. The purple one represents the payload, and the bluish one represents the signature. Those are the three things that are going to make a token. Now, going back to our slides, let's talk about the headers. The headers contain some information of the algorithm used and the type of token. So the algorithm used is the, in this case, you can see JWT is going to use SHS256. It's more of an hashing algorithm we are going to use. So the type of this token is JWT in our case. So that is the header. It contains hashing information of the algorithm used to hash. And I'll explain why we need to hash, because we need to encode some data inside and the type of the token. So our case is JWT. So that's the first part about the header. Let's talk about the payload. The payload is the information encoded in. So with JWT, some part of it is encoding some data. Why do we need to encode some data? I'll give you a scenario of what we have right now. What we have right now is two tables. We have a user table and we have a booking table. And a user can add a booking. So this means that if we could restructure our table, in the booking table, we'll just have user ID and not name, email, and any other thing that we have concerning the user. So we'll just have user ID, and with the user ID, we can get the name and email. So that will be a bit of a well-normalized database of tables. Yeah, database, sorry. So in our case, if a user logs in and wants to add a new booking. Remember, for the new booking now, in the table that we have restructured in our minds, does not have a name and an email. It has a user ID to represent the name and the email, because with the user ID, you can get the rest. So we have a user ID, and you want to get the exact ID of the logged in user. One thing will be, maybe you say we need now to pass the ID as param. But if we pass ID as param, it doesn't give us we can pass an ID of a unlogged user, and it still work, because it doesn't depend if the user is logged in. It only depends if the user exists or the ID exists. But in a case whereby we want to get the exact ID of the logged in user, we'll use payload. So in our payload, we could have some data encoded there. Some data could be ID, the name and email. And then when we are adding a new booking, we protect that route. Protecting that route means that this route will have to ask for a token from the request. So if a protected route is like a protected area, you'll have to give an ID, or in our case, we'll have to give a token. So this route is now protected, and we ask the request, give me the token. So I get the token, and from the token, I can read some data from it. So I can read the data about the currently logged in user from the payload, because this data is encoded in the payload. So from the payload, I can now get the ID and now use that ID as the current, the booking for the current logged in user. Okay, so these are payload. It's just for encoding some data. The next and the last part is the signature. So a signature is used to verify that the sender of the JWT is who it says it is. So with signature, it's first, it has a secret. And this secret is secret to you. So if your signature leaks, then someone can intervene or can be the middleman of your token. Let's say an hacker, if he or she knows your secret, then he can read the information that is encoded. But if he doesn't know your secret, then he can't be able to read that. Because each and every time the secret changes, a new token is generated. So an hacker will need to know your secret in order to verify the signature. In order to verify this, you must have the secret key of the person who encoded this token, or the developer who wrote that API. So those are the three things a token must have. Questions after that? So you can think of it as this, the algorithm right there. This some data that is encoded there. You can see the name and sub Muslims, subject. Okay. Most likely it's going to hold an ID value. It's not a must use sub. You can write your own stuff. So these are token and how it works. So let's try with a diagram. Okay, this picture can be displayed well. Right. Like this. Just a minute, I reopen this slide. They are inactive. In case you have any question, feel free to ask. So we have this. Now, these are custom process about a user trying to log into a system. So the first step is send an API request. This is the front end and this is the backend. And the backend now communicates with the database. So first thing, we sign up. So within sign up, we provide a username, ID, email, role, and password, what we are just doing. And then the second step is first check if the user, if there is an existing user that email. So if there is no existing user, we send back a message, registration was successful. So now the user is registered. So let's go to login. We have a post request. We are giving in a username and password. In this case, username and password, the username is unique. So we are going to authenticate this user just to confirm if he has the right credentials there. And after authenticating, we create a JWT string with a secret. So when we are sending back now, we are sending back the user a token and some information if we have to give some information. So now the user has a token at this point. So assuming this user wants to access a protected route, so he'll send a request and append or add a token to the request. I'll show you how to do that. It's mostly added to the request header. So you'll pass in the token that you are given here to the request header. So now, behind the scenes, the middleware, now this is the part of the middleware. It's going to check the JWT signature and then get user information and authenticate. So, and also authorize user using user authorities if you have some priorities like admin user. So lastly, it will go to return content based on authorities. So this is the process of your front end and back end will be interacting most likely. So let's check another image here. This is more of like showing you the request pipeline. So a request here at the top where we have the yellow arrow enters to the backend or to our node application. So first it's going to pass through this middleware. It's called CORS. We haven't talked about CORS, but it's just middleware that allows two ports to communicate with each other because our backend is at 4,000, maybe your front end is running a different port like 3,000 or 4,200. So these are two different ports. CORS just make sure that you can allow communication from external ports and not the current one. So that is CORS. Now, I will talk about it maybe later. Security, let's go to this part, security. So first thing, we have authentication middleware. You can create a middleware or else you can just authenticate the user. So the user must be authenticated. So a user logs in first, must be logged in. If not, then take him to log in and he'll have a token now. So when we get to this step of authorization middleware, the user already has a token. So he provides his or a token and the token is verified. We check on expiry, we check on validity. So after this, then it's when we get to the controller or executing the method that is linked to that route in the controller. So that's where we go to the route handler. And then the controller, since it's handling the logic, it's going to communicate with the database. In this case, we have SQLize. SQLize is just an ORM, but think of it now. Stored procedure communicates with the database. They get some information and they give that information as a response to the user. So those are the step-by-step procedure of what is happening, right? Yeah. Okay. Any question before now we go to the practical side? Yeah.
A question on the payload part of the JWT token. So does it have a limit? Like, is there a set amount of data that you can hash within the payload, or you can just encrypt, let's say, the entire user profile?
It doesn't have a limit. I don't think there's a limit. Only thing you must make sure is an object. That's the only thing that I've seen. You can pass the entire user profile there. Any other question? Right. It's like we have understood that. So let's do the practical side. Yeah, Roy.
From explanation, it means if one developer exposes the entire JWT, it means the system is down since it relies on one secret key.
Yeah. If it's secret key.
So how do you overcome that one? Because maybe everyone makes a mistake and then the first key is exposed, meaning one can access the entire system.
Use environment files. So you don't push your .env. It's like just exposing your password. So the secret will be in the same level as the environment variable. So when you're pushing your code, it's not going to go with your code. It's just going to remain locally.
And then considering this one is a JSON token, and then you want to log out a user from the system, definitely you have to tell the user to clear the cookies. So does it mean like when you maybe you are removing a user in the system, you have to tell him to keep on clearing the cookies so that the tokens can be erased since they're stored on the client side?
No, because most likely you'll be storing the token on the local storage. So when you log out the user, you are going to clear the local storage. And when the user logs in again, it means that he's going to get a different token. So you just clear the local storage. And when the local storage is cleared, of course, going to log out the user. When the user is logging again to the system, he's supposed to be given another token, and then it will be stored in the local storage. Elvis.
Okay, I have a question, but before I proceed to my question, so maybe another strategy of managing keys, you can have key rotation so that after a given period of time, you change your keys so that in case if they leak, they will always like it will always change. You can have key rotation. And then I will request that if it will be possible, you also touch on revoking this JWT token. So like when you use these tokens, it means if it's exposed or an hacker or anyway, this key gets the token gets exposed, and then somebody else can log in as the user, like they can masquerade. So like one of the strategies they recommend to mitigate this is to have revoking, like a way you can revoke these tokens. So I'll request that if it will be possible, maybe you go over how you can implement key revocation, the token revocation.
Okay, I haven't revoked our token, so maybe I'll first check on it first. Okay, what is key rotation? Please ask. Okay. Elvis, go ahead and explain that.
So maybe let me remove the word rotation. So you change your keys. you have a way that after a given period of time, your secret key. So JWT are the asymmetric hashing, like it depends on the secrecy of the key. You have one key. So when you're creating these tokens, there is a key, there is something that you only know as the developer or your backend knows. So if the key gets lost, then anybody else can generate this token. So when Jonathan was demonstrating this, the signature part of it, you are the only one who can verify that it's correct because you are the only one who knows the secret. Now, if your secret leaks, anyone else can just generate these keys and masquerade or lie that is you. So in order to prevent you losing your keys, or if it gets lost, you have to have a way that you change your keys given a certain period of time. So let's say you can have it daily or weekly, like you change your keys over time. That's what key rotation means. I hope that's a bit clear now.
I have another question. You said the keys are stored in the local storage, and assuming now someone's okay, and then you also said that the keys, when the client uh, goes offline, the keys still be stored there, and so when he comes back, he will find the key again. So meaning the keys are bundled over and over, and the size is increasing. Is it not causing a risk because it's easy for one to capture these cookies and maybe using the debuggers to access the tokens?
One thing is also keys have expiring date or time. So you can't have a key that okay, you can have a key that doesn't expire, but it's not advisable. So first you need to make sure that these keys can expire. And if a user tries to use an expired key, then it's going to be revoked. Secondly is the keys won't okay, the keys will always be cleared when the user logs out, and when the user logs in, you're just going to write the token once. So there's no way you can find more than 2 keys in one local storage. It's always going to be one because it's the key that is currently in use for the logged in user. And when he logs out, we clear it. When he logs in again, we recreate it and save it in the local storage. That thing is, this key cannot be, or no one can know what is encoded inside if he doesn't have the secret key, if he doesn't have the secret key. So even if you expose it, if you don't have my secret key, you can't read it. Or you can modify, or you can reclaim that you are me when you are not. So they won't pile up fast. They'll always have one key at a specific time because, or you don't have a key, that is when the user is logged in. And also they can't cause a lot of effect to you if you don't leak your secret key that is used to encode this data, or that will be used to verify your.
So onto that, does it mean like and they capture the previous packets, and then since they are using the same secret code, and then I come and capture them the current token, would it not be possible to get the pattern that is going on since the first key is the one that is coming? I'm considering it's a JSON file. And what would be also the effect of adding more data heads to the what do you call it? To the token.
Effect is just add data that is exposing first. Like you can't add a password to your payload. You need to add those other information that don't have a lot of people to. Okay. Elvis.
So maybe I give a scenario on why I ask key revocation. So the tokens they expire. You said, let's say in my system I have the tokens that expire after 1 day, and then in the middle of the day, during the day, a certain user is blocked or is downgraded. All the privileges he had have been downgraded. Let's say he was an admin and then he has downgraded to a normal user. But now because the tokens are set to expire after 1 day, the token has already been issued, so he still has those privileges. There's no way you can change that. So like, in order to prevent this user having those privileges or logging in back in, you need a way to verify that this token is no longer valid, although it has been issued and still has not expired. So in order to do that, they say you need to implement a system to revoke these keys. So that's why maybe I asked in such case of a scenario.
Okay, makes sense. I'll check on it first and then maybe get your answer and maybe a code implementation of that. All right, let's write the code for this. First thing, we need a secret here. The secret key can be anything, provided it's secret to you. So now, I'll go to my auth controller. I go there. Let me first go to the config file and copy this way of that we may be able to read the .env file. So now I have a secret, I have a way of in my .env, I have a way of reading the .env here. Now, each and every time a user logs in, we want to give back a token that he can use for the other processes. So I'll write first thing, sorry. We need a library for this too. So this library is called JSON web token. This one. So you just need to install it. So it's installed. I'll also import it at the top. Just name it JWT. From there, I think you need some types too. So let's add some types to it. Now, okay. Yeah, before we send back a message of user logged in, I'll just say constant token is equals to JWT dot sign. And then first thing I need to pass a payload. The second thing I need to pass a secret. The third thing, which is optional, is some options. So how do I pass a payload? The payload, I want to encode the data that we are getting back here. So I'll first say constant user data, or even let's name it payload. And I'll select some information to encode and what not to encode. So here I'll say user dot map, because our user is an array. I'll just map through, and we just have one item, but for each item I want to be able to omit the password. Don't want to sign my password in the token, so I'll omit the password and I can sign the rest. So after all these, we're just going to return the rest. So in this, we are just avoiding the password and we are returning the other details. So now when I'm passing a payload, remember a payload has to be an object, and this payload that we have here is an array. So let's see what error it will bring. The second thing that I'm passing here is process.env dot secret key. So I'm referring to this secret here. So this is what you should make sure that it doesn't leak in any case. So there is still causing some issue. So I'll just strong type it as string that way, and the issue will be gone. I'll typecast it. So the last thing is an option. And for the option, you can pass things like expires in, and you can say something like 3600 seconds or minutes or months. So now our payload here is not complaining, but this is an array. We all know that this is an array. Map method is going to return an array for us. So just make sure that you can access the first index of the array. And lastly, after giving the message, I'll also give the token. So let's see how this works. So you can see the data that we are getting is the message plus a token right here. And you can see the information encoded in this is also right here. The information encoded in this token is this. So if we log in with a different user and send this request, we get a new token. And now the information that is encoded is this. Now we have row. So these are one way in which you can use a token to encode some information. And there are two things that are added here. We have IAT. IAT is when the token issued at when the token was created. So this is time. And expiry date is also time this token will expire. And you can see that it's expiring 1 hour from now. So that's how you create a token. The next thing should be how we verify. Before we go to that, any question after that? All right. So now how to verify this token will be different. So first thing I'll create, no, I'll create it later. I'll create a new folder and I'll call it middlewares. And in this middleware, I'll create a new file and I'll name it verify token.ts. So the logic that will be here is all about verifying a token. First thing first is I'll copy something, the imports that I need. I still need these three. And also I need the requests. That way. Now, let's create a function. So verified token is just a function. It will be export the minute export function, and I'll name it verify token. And I'll have a request of type request. I'll have a response of type response. And this time I'm using the third option, that is the next one, of type next function. And yeah, that's all. Now, we have been saying that a request, or sorry, a token is passed in the headers of this request. So how do we get a token from, or how do we pass a token, or where can we get a token from? And is exactly the headers of this token. So a token is passed at the headers of this request, of a request, not a token, headers of a request. So I'll check if not if, I'll say constant token is equals and I can check something like request dot headers. So I'm instructing it to go to the headers and get me a token, and I'm supposed to give the property used, because you have to give a property and a value. The value will be the token, the property will be a key that can be used to access the token. So most likely you'll see X something. I'm just going to keep it simple by just saying token. And I'll typecast this as a string that way. So first thing is if no token, this is like someone trying to access the school without an ID. So what we do with it is we tell him that this is an authorized. An authorized is for what? Someone check for me, I guess for or forbidden, one of those two. I'd love a JSON. And then the error, I guess it should be for one, forbidden. The error will be forbidden. I'll just give a forbidden that way. I guess we should be using for one. What is for one? Okay. Should be forbidden or unauthorized. Any of those two. You can check which one should be. Yeah, it should be unauthorized because that is not authorized. So next thing is now this person has a token, but we are not going to let him in just like that, because you may be using a Kenyatta University ID at University of Nairobi. That is not also correct. So we need to verify if you are part of us. So to verify this, we pass in first the token, and secondly, we pass the secret key. So the same secret key we use to sign is the one we pass here. And I'll also typecast this that way. So now when you verify, you're going to get back something. And this something is called decoded data. So you get the data in the payload when you verify. I just name it data. So just payload data here. That makes sense. So you get the data that you signed or you added to the token. Now, after this, then this means that if we get data, then this means that the token is valid. I'll add a try catch there. And then we can give some errors. So you can say res.status, and I'll say for O3 forbidden. And then JSON, you can give it the error dot message, and you just need to type to make this error of type any or unknown. Now, what will happen here is that if a user comes in without a token, he'll get this error. Secondly, if the token is not valid, he'll get an error from here. Thirdly, execution stops here because we have to call something. Think of this person as, okay, I'll still use the same example. If you are going to school and the gate man stops, then he's the one who is going to decide if you continue to school or you go back home and get your ID. So that is if you have an ID or not. And if you have an ID, it can now release you to go to the next operation, that is school and everything. So now we have to release also this request to continue on with this journey because we are in the middle of the request. So we must call the next things that should happen after that. So that's where we use next. Now, sometimes you want to use this data here. And how should you use it? So I'll come here and define my own interface. I'll call it extended request, extends request that way. After that, I'll define an interface that is going to represent the data in the token. So the data in the token is this. So we can say interface decoded data and passing this. So I can just remove these and it can inspire, but let's just use the let's just use the strings here. So these two are numbers. So this is the structure of the data in the token. We know this because we have added the data in the data in the payload. We have added it ourselves, so we know the structure or the kind of data that is ending up there. So now I'll come back here and say I'll first import that decoded decoded data interface right there. And after that, I'll add a property here, a custom one, and I'll just name it info, and it will be optional. This means that a request may not have this data, because when you talk about a register request, it doesn't have a token. There's no need of a token. So it will be optional, and the type will be of type decoded data. So now this data, I'm going to store it in the request again. And I'll say yes, I'll first typecast it, decoded data. That is the payload data, and say request dot info is equals to decoded payload data. And instead of using a normal request, I'll use our extended request, so it won't complain. And yep, this is our middleware. So let's go to now using it. To use it, I'll go back to my auth controller and define a new path here. Export a sync function. It will be called homepage. So in order to get the homepage, we have to be logged in. So let's try that. And I'll use request as extended request and response as response. That way. And inside here, I can have my try catch. And for the extended request, we may need to read the info. So that may need also us to add this property on our extended request here at the auth controller. Since it's an optional property, it won't affect anything else. You just need to add the interface. Okay. So right here we can say if request. I'm using if because it's an optional property. So if we have request.info, then say back rest.status to 100.json, and I'll say welcome, and then I'll say request.info name. So welcome the person who is logged in, and I will add that route here like we have been doing. So here I'll say auth controller dot get, these are get request, and this will be to the home route or path, and it will call the home page that way. Okay, let's test this and see what we get. So I'll have my get request here. This will be get, and instead of register, this will be home that way. So if I click this request right now, it's waiting. Okay. But now this is not yet protected. So how can we protect it? So a user can be able to access this without having to log in. So we'll add our middleware in between there that way. So this is now what we call a protected route. It has a middleware in between before getting whatever the route is doing in the controller. That is the logic that is handling the controller, and you it in the endpoint, you'll have middleware in between there, which is supposed to make sure that you meet certain things before having to go that way. So when I send this request now, I'll get an error that this is forbidden and cannot set it as okay. We know that is due to because we never added some return statements here. I keep forgetting this, but once you know the error, you won't have an issue. And also here can also have a return statement. That one. So right now it should not cause any issue. So I'll send this. You can see the error is forbidden. This is coming because there's no token. So where am I supposed to pass a token? First, let's log in. And we have a token here. Remember, I say that to separate the header and the body using when you are testing using the Rapid API client, you leave a space, but token is part of headers. So I'll just pass it as token and pass my token there. No quotes, no anything, just pass it. Now, when I send this request, I see the name of the person who is logged in. So if it happens that it's not Roy who is logged in, it's Elvis, and I send this request, I'll be provided with another token. So I need to use that token again and pass it there. So this time it won't tell me Roy, it will tell me it's Elvis. Yeah. That's JWT. Any question? Onesmus.
Sometimes I see people adding the name BRL. Does it have any importance before the token? And then when you're getting the token, you split it.
Or you split it.
Yeah, adding the name BRL, does it have any importance?
The name token or which name?
Before when you're sending the request, you add the name bearer to the token, and then you to the token before at the front. Then when you're getting the token, you split it into two, and you get the token itself. Is there any essence of using bearer?
No, I won't say so. It's just a syntax that has to be followed when you are using when it comes to bearer, you're always using what is this called? Access something. Bearer token. It's a property in the HTTP header. You can remind me the name of that property. If I open my Postman. Yeah, it's this authorization. So you have to pass bearer and the token. So if you decide to go with this syntax, then you have to pass this in this format. And then in your backend, you have to split the two. Bearer, and now you get your token. and you can now continue with your token. But if you don't want to pass through that path, you can just define the property yourself, like we have done here, saying that I'm going to pass in some property to the token. So I guess this is using headers.authorization. Yeah. So you add authorization and then you say bearer, then the token. And you are reading this from the token. So you read something from the authorization. So now you come here and split the two. You get the bearer side and then the token side. So if you are passing your token in the authorization part of the headers, then you'll have to go through that step. You'll have to pass your token as bearer, then token, and then you'll also have to split it again. But if you are defining the property that you're going to pass to, like in our case, you don't need to destruct anything, you just need to pass to that property. So depends on which method you have chosen, both are correct. Yeah, Elvis.
Maybe a question on using bearer. So a while back we had a discussion with my friends. We were like, so bearer, because it's like everybody knows that your token is stored in bearer. Doesn't that pose a security risk? Like anyone who just wants to hack your or get or penetrate your application, he just knows that your token, you have attached it to the bearer. So like, is it a binding requirement? Is it an industry standard, or is just a convention? Like, let's say if you decide not to use bearer and then you press it somewhere else, so like you will have enforced security by obscurity. Like, it's not known now where you are pressing your token. So is the bearer industry standard or just a convention that it's one of the ways you can store your token?
I'll say I'll also argue with your point. I don't have to pass everything to my bearer, but for some languages they are super strict. You have to pass it to bearer. So if you don't have to pass it to bearer, you can do your own way. It's more of the structure that is there, because authorization is part of headers, and that's where you pass the token. So it's more of an industry structure stroke convention, because you can also go your own way, which is not wrong. For example, in our case, we are going our own way. So no one knows where we are storing our token unless we tell him we are storing it in some place called token. Or if you can have anything here and you can just pass your token to that point. So it's more of a standard because of the way the request is structured, and they want to pass the token to the headers.authorization. But if you can do it your own way, like we have done here, then just go that way. If the language sometimes forces you to go their own way, go that way. So depends on the language also. Some languages are super strict. And you can still go your way. I'll go my way because of that also, security you are adding on top of that. Christine, please remember to commit your code. Today we are not committing. Don't stay my laptop, man. I'll commit it. Any other question? But I never wanted to commit this code today. For one reason or the other. Anyway, I'll just commit it, but don't paste the code. I can see my code from 30 meters. All right, so that's authorization and authentication. Use this logic right where this logic here, and try, if you get some time, that is, and try to remove the name and the email from there. from the body. Instead of passing name and email, replace them with user ID and read the user ID from the token. So try that when you get some time, and I'll update the code maybe later on when I also try it and change some database structure here and there and see how that, you'll also see how that has an effect on writing better code. You don't have to pass a lot of things because name and email in our booking table, they are quite redundant. It's like writing redundant code because I just need or an unnormalized database, because instead of passing name and email, why can't I just pass the user ID? And the user ID is encoded in the token. So it will be super easy for us to pass the user ID, and it will automatically get the user ID of the logged in person. So think of that as a way of reducing the struggle that you have to go through passing user IDs and everything. Secondly, you also have the role encoded in the token. So you can also verify other things like admin and user roles. You can also define them there because you can check the role before doing some logic. So if you get some time, try that too. Yeah. You're free to leave. You have your lunch until 2:15.